Byron, it sounds like you concentrate an awful lot on sales training. Talk to me about that.
Well, Victoria, it's like when we were talking before the interview. My background's definitely sales. I've always had a sales personality, and I'm sorry, 70-80% of all sales environment, it is personality. At the same time, there's skill that's involved. And I had the luxury in my early days of corporate world. I worked for a company which at that time was named Bell South. It was their cellular arm, so it was a new industry completely. And at that time, we rolled out a training from a very large training organization that they really had a nice training. Now, I came from the field, so into the training organization. I wasn't a, quote, trainer that they just keep moving around to learn a product. So from a sales training perspective, I looked at it from my customer, which was the sales representatives that I was training to send them back out into the field. And the beautiful thing about this was I had realized I'd always focused on the customer by far. But when I was going through this, a 5-day program, we're teaching some great skills and they could demonstrate them, but they weren't getting the real information that they needed from the customer. So, I went back and I always asked questions. Hey, I don't feel like I'm getting the results. And the answer that I always got was, hey, it's new skills. It takes them a while. Well, I'm a sales guy. I don't like no, and I don't like failing. So I set my standards different than someone else. So what I kept doing over that time was constantly tweaking it and asking the question, what can I do to make this better? And what am I missing? And notice I'm taking all the fault here because I look at it as if I'm the person teaching it, I've got to be able to listen to what they're doing, observe what they're doing, and seeing the impact with the customer. And if it's not getting the outcomes that I'm looking for, I need to fix what I'm teaching them. And that philosophy just simplified everything. So from a sales training perspective, I converted everything to a conversation. It's so funny how often I'll go into an organization and they'll go, you do transactional sales. And I'm like, how do you figure? I know their revenue. I know their history. I know all these things. How in the world? And here's why. I don't have to ask 20 questions to get the information I need. I ask maybe 5 or 6 or 7 questions, and the customer just continues to talk and tell me a lot of things. A lot of times they probably shouldn't tell me, but I learned so much from it. So from a sales training perspective, I focused on it in the beginning because number one, it's a revenue generator. So when I'm going out talking to customers and they're looking at me from a standpoint of an expense because I'm not cheap, I don't want to be cheap, that's not my goal. So when they're looking at me as a sales trainer, they're wanting results. Now, have I done free trainings and helped people get better? Absolutely. Have I been ripped off a few times? Absolutely. But I still believe when I work with a client, I have no problem challenging them. I have no problem getting in there and taking calls or going out on appointments because the skills will take care of everything. I laugh every time I meet with new clients and I go, well, you're not familiar with our industry. Our industry is so much different. That's total bogus bullcrap. Think about it. If you're in pharmaceutical sales, you weren't always. You went to college. You didn't learn pharmaceutical sales. You went to college. You get out, you know absolutely nothing. You think you know something, but you know nothing. You've been taught theory. Then you go to work for a pharmaceutical company, and then you learn. So the key to sales training is sales is sales is sales. You just have to adapt to the product. And that's what I keep simple. I don't force anything. I have always avoided all these acronyms and here's our formula, here's how it works. Do I have a process and a principle? Absolutely. But when I get into an organization, I got to see how they interact with their customers. Some people force an appointment when they don't need an appointment. Some people do it a lot of different ways. I flex with it. I don't force the client into my process. I force my process to improve their process. And that's why I focus on sales training, because here's what happens. When you look at customer service, most of the time it's broken because they forget what happens in the field. When you look at marketing, marketing's job is to make the phone ring or someone to come on. No one really cares what the impact is on sales. When I've worked with customer service, they always have this saying, oh, the salespeople lie all the time. And then I challenge every one of them in customer service. Get out in the field yourself and you'll start learning. It's not the sales reps that are lying. It's the customers. So let's, from a sales training, I love sales. I enjoy sales. It brings in a lot of great satisfaction, not just monetarily, but when you see people's lives change, and it comes out of sales. So I'm kind of partial.